Hi everyone. So I watched Urban Spook since I've been trying to, get back into internet like ARGs, web horror, that kind of thing. And I watched it. I watched the Creepcast episode about it and Wendigoon's video where he compared it with Greylock. And I just kind of wanted to yap my thoughts. It's not good, but I wanted to like expound on that, and kind of give a little bit more of my thoughts. So, obviously, a lot of people are offended by the content of Urban Spook, which, if you don't know, there is a lot of child abuse, both physical and sexual abuse, murder, obviously. And I think there's an issue where, like, obviously people are going to be like offended by that, and that's fair. Um, I personally, I don't think that, child abuse, murder, that kind of thing is illegitimate as subject matter. I think that you can absolutely tell a story with these elements and have it be effective. So that's not really what I'm having an issue with. It's more like the way that it's used in the story, which is just for shock value. I think if you're going to include these elements in your story, then see, it's kind of one of those things where it's like you want it to have a purpose, but you don't want to be like, you can't do that and like dictate what other people, do with their art. But in this case, I think that yeah, you kind of need to have a point. So you have the setup, the painter, he kills his victims, he makes a painting based upon their death, and I really like that idea. I love serial killer fiction. I love Longlegs. I love the first season of True Detective. I love Hannibal. I love it when serial killers in fiction have like a weird artsy thing that they do. I think that's great. And I love being able to like point out possible like motives that they have. Um, and having it be symbolic as what they're doing to this body is like some kind of like weird artsy thing. I really like that. And so when I saw the painter, I was like, that's a really neat idea. You know, unfortunately, that's about like all the good things I can say about the painter or Urban Spook or whatever it's called. Um, I think that he obviously was very sensitive to criticism. He was very unkind to people who were critics of him, and he decided to go like be more offensive because I think it was I want to say it was like the Corey thing first. Yes, okay, Corey thing first, and then he did more like shocking, like ooh, look how evil he is type thing. And um, obviously, if his purpose was just to shock, then well, he did it. But I think actually it's not really so much disturbing to me as like because it takes a lot to get to me at this point when it comes to like fictional stuff. But he like goes right over like the being offensive into just being very silly because okay, one of the kills is like he buries a guy in wax, like he crawls up into his apartment through the window, and I'm like, okay, so you're gonna have these serial killers because there's two of them. Spoilers. You're gonna have these serial killers carry like 2,000 pounds of wax up a pipe into an apartment and bury the guy in it. And that's just very absurd and not a great kill. And I think that if he had just kept with the, like, chopping people up, you know, as an artistic experiment, there's something like interesting like that. Like if he was using their blood to paint, or using their different like bodily fluids to paint, but he just doesn't do that. Um, he just buries the guy in wax, and then he keeps going with the bestiality like deaths that happen because there's two of them, of course, because look how shocking, and it just becomes completely intangible as horror. right? So, like when you're watching like True Detective, for example, the first season of True Detective, because so far that's the only one I've seen, the killer and his motives are very, very tangible. They're realistic. You got this weird like cult shit going on. Um, and the way that he kills his victims is in a way that is believable. Like if you saw this on the news, you could go, "Oh yeah," like me. Obviously, hopefully you don't, but if you saw it on the news, you would believe that it could have happened. Um, the kills in this are just like completely nonsensical. There's too many of them per video. Because like what will happen is they'll be like, we found these paintings and we found these bodies, and then there was another body over here, and that guy was horribly murdered, and he had a painting in this video, and it's like completely like intangible. Like, how am I supposed to believe that these serial killers, like even though there are two of them, how am I supposed to believe that they do all of this? And it just like completely catapults itself into being very silly as a concept. Like he's trying to be shocking, but it's like edgy 14-year-old like thrasher kid shocking. So he's like, ooh, like look at all these bodies in the barn, and this lady was fucked by a horse to death, and that guy got his head got like stuffed in a pig, and then the granddaughter's head was found over there, and it's like, okay, this is like really dumb, and the violence is so over the top that it's just like unbelievable. You're sitting there like, okay, well, that's very dumb. Um, so yeah, um, I think that this could have worked if it was written by anyone else. I'm sorry, that's a little unkind, but that's the truth. Because like I said, like the concept of somebody who paints their victims and like leaves a painting as a calling card is a very interesting concept. And like I said, I love the artistic serial killer in fiction, trying to say something through the body. Like, and I don't like think that violence is illegitimate a subject matter. I don't think that, excessive gore is a bad thing necessarily in a story. Like I spent an entire summer reading nothing but splatterpunk, and Exquisite Corpse is one of my favorite books. So obviously I'm not like against violence in books, and even like violence that others would consider gratuitous. Um, it's just that it should have a point. Like, is the killer trying to say something by murdering these kids? Like, is the kid maybe a minority? Do they have some kind of mental or physical handicap that made them an easy target? Um, are they being posed in a certain way, or certain body parts removed as some kind of metaphor? Um, I think that if he had done that, it absolutely could have worked, or at least given, like, maybe it wouldn't have been, like, great, but it would have at least elevated itself a little bit, because you're like, oh, it's an artistic thing, and instead of just the paintings, because I think that just the paintings are not nearly enough to, I don't want to say justify, but, like, justify the violence, for lack of a better term. Um, And yeah, so I think that those are my thoughts on Urban Spook, or The Painter, or whatever you want to call it. Um, I think that he should learn how to take some criticism better. And I honestly think that he could elevate this to like better, like good, maybe, if he, considered how the violence fits in with the narrative he's trying to tell and the character. Oh, sorry, okay, I keep yapping. Like, we have no motive for these characters, like these killers, whatsoever. Like, they just kill willy-nilly. And like I said, like, if they were trying to say something, like, I'm going to use Exquisite Corpse as an example. So, which killer is it? Jay. He lives in New Orleans, in the French Quarter, and he goes after minorities, these young boys who will not be missed by society. Like, that's who he targets. They're drifters who come in from out of town. They're always out-of-towners. Those are his targets because he knows that nobody is going to be looking for them. And, like, what does that say about society, that all these young men who happen to not be white, who are queer, are being murdered by this guy? what does it say about the AIDS epidemic and how this guy kind of personifies the way that AIDS like brutalized the queer community. That has a point, and that like motivation. The character has motivation, and we know Jay and later Andrew, the other serial killer in the book. We know who they are. We know why they target who they target, and we know what that says about society. Then, right? So I think if the painter, if he only killed, or they, because there's two of them, but sorry, if they only killed like one kind of person, or if other people were collateral damage, for example, like maybe they only go after children, but the family was in the way in a couple of these cases, like one or two of them, and that's why the family is killed then. Or maybe it's like in Longlegs where he killed whole families and what it says about traditional family dynamics and like fear and religion and that kind of thing, right? So the killer's just killing everybody, which way, whenever, whoever. They don't have any motivation then, right? They don't have like a thing, for lack of a better term. And so that's another thing that just makes everything completely like silly because they're just killing everybody, They don't have a point for their killing. Um, yeah. Okay. Now I'm done with my urban spook spiel. Um, Pretty disappointed in it. I hope that he takes some of the criticisms to heart. And thinks more about like motivation, characterization, because you can do that with a serial killer character. Um, like just through the murder. Like you don't have to see them, right? Um, I think that he should really just, like I said, take criticism, maybe rewrite it, actually like, write a script out, um, maybe make a timeline of events, um, because this could be something, special. He could really make something at that, maybe if not good, is at least interesting, right? Um, But yeah, okay. I am done yapping about Urban Spook. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you later. Bye.